I've replayed that night in my head so many times it almost feels like a movie scene. We, my wife Chelsea and I, were sitting in our living room, a room once warm with personal. Chelsea looked at me from her spot near the arm of the sofa. She was leaning forward, elbows on her knees, her expression serious but oddly detached. I can't describe it any other way. Her face was devoid of warmth, a subtle veneer of indifference replacing the tenderness that I once believed was always there beneath the surface. After a long pause, she cleared her throat and spoke. Her voice was calm, quiet, but every syllable tore into me. "I don't need you anymore, Brandon. I'm better off alone." At first, her words simply didn't compute. They hung in the air like a line from a script that didn't fit the scene. I blinked, my mind refusing to connect the dots. Did she really say that? I remember the fleeting thought. This must be a misunderstanding or some kind of joke. My mouth felt dry, and it took everything in me to form a response. What? What do you mean? I managed, my voice trembling more than I cared to admit. But Chelsea's answer made it painfully clear that this was no joke. She shrugged as if my question was tedious and repeated the gist of it. She wanted out of our marriage. She'd felt this way for a while, she said, and had only now worked up the resolve to voice it. Those words struck me harder than a physical blow. Everything in the living room seemed to spin for a moment. The overhead lamp, the scattered items around us, even the stale smell of leftover dinner in the air, it all blurred as my body flushed cold. This was the woman I had shared the last 6 years of my life with, a woman I believed was my partner, my confidant, my best friend. Now she said plainly that she wanted no part of me. She decided we were finished. She didn't shout, didn't cry, didn't show remorse or hesitation. It felt impossibly cruel that she was so casual, so matter-of-fact, as if she were flipping off a light switch. I recall trying to reason with her, stumbling over my words. "We've been together for years, Chels. If there's something wrong, talk to me. Let's fix it. You can't just discard everything." My voice cracked, and I hated how desperate I sounded. I was terrified of losing everything. The sense of home, the daily routines we formed, the vision of our future. A wave of humiliation passed through me as I grasped at straws to keep her from walking away. She responded with an icy finality that made my blood go cold. "That's the problem, Brandon. I don't want to fix it. I've already tried too hard. I'm done. I'm focusing on myself now." Her next move was to stand up, heading for the bedroom, leaving me alone on that worn couch, with my thoughts crashing like a tidal wave in my mind. She had said her piece as though it was a simple statement of preference, like choosing a brand of cereal, but her decision was the death sentence of our marriage, whether or not I was ready for it. That night, I sat in the living room until well past midnight, staring at the blank TV screen, hearing her footsteps in the bedroom overhead. She never came back downstairs. Sleep was impossible. An ache pulsed behind my eyes. I tried to rationalize everything. Maybe it was a phase or a meltdown. Maybe she was just exhausted, or maybe she wanted to spur me into some dramatic gesture. But deep down, I feared she truly meant every word. The next morning, I found her in the kitchen packing up belongings. She was methodical. T-shirts in one box, random trinkets in another. There was no rage in her expression, just a flat resolve. I recall standing in the doorway, still in my pajamas, asking, "Chels, are you serious? You're leaving right now." Her reply was so calm it bordered on eerie. "Yes, I am. I'll be out by the weekend. It's better this way for both of us." I tried once more to get her to engage. "We can't just do this on a whim," I pleaded. But she wasn't hearing me. She repeated she'd thought about it for a long time, insisted she didn't see any reason to drag it out. It was as if I was invisible to her feelings. No second guessing, no tears. She was simply going. Within the span of a few days, half her clothes disappeared from the closet. Personal items vanished from the bathroom shelves. She emailed me a separation agreement, a bare-bones arrangement for who'd keep certain things. It read like a standard business contract addressing finances, the car, the apartment lease. Not once did she mention the emotional side of it. She didn't ask if I was okay. The night she left, the final night we spent under the same roof, was oddly silent. She had most of her luggage at the door. I couldn't bring myself to speak. She was in the bedroom, finalizing her suitcase, while I lingered in the hallway, listening to the echoes of her zipping her bags. Eventually, she came out, looked me in the eye, and said, "Take care, Brandon." That was it. No meltdown, no speech, no hug or tearful goodbye. Just that cold phrase. I remember her footsteps fading down the corridor, the door clicking shut, then the hollow quiet that followed. I stood there, pulse roaring in my ears, realizing I was now alone. This place, our place, became a hollow shell. A year's worth of shared living undone in a single day. That first night alone, I didn't sleep at all. Couldn't even lie down. I paced from room to room, recalling how we'd once shared laughs in each space, the silly arguments about decor, the times we'd collapse on the sofa exhausted but content. Where had it all gone wrong? I nearly called her a dozen times, but each time my finger hovered over the call button, I convinced myself it wouldn't matter. She had made her choice, and she'd seemed so sure of it. Eventually, I collapsed onto the couch, burying my face in a pillow, letting the tears come in strangled sobs. I felt humiliated, rejected. A swirl of anger and heartbreak churned in my gut. Through it all, there was a creeping dread that I'd never be able to recover from this. Surviving the aftermath. The next few days were a haze of emotional whiplash. One part of me wanted to break down, the other part forced me to keep functioning. I still had to go to work, handle groceries, pay bills. I told my boss something vague about a personal crisis, and he gave me a bit of leeway. My colleagues sensed something was off, but no one pried. For that, I was grateful. The last thing I wanted was to recount the story of how my wife had declared she didn't need me. But while I was drowning in sorrow, I also felt a gnawing curiosity about how she was doing. She claimed she'd be better off alone. Fine. So what was this new, improved life like? I tried to be rational. Maybe she found a sense of peace. Maybe she got a new job or something. The rational side of me told me I should focus on my own healing, but my battered heart needed to know how she was adjusting to singledom so confidently. So I found myself lingering on her social media pages more than I should have. That's where I saw the first sign of her so-called independence. She posted a photo. She was out with friends at some rooftop bar downtown, the Skyline Lounge, a fancy place we'd never visited together because she'd once deemed it too pretentious. There she was wearing a stylish new dress, raising a glass with a wide grin. The caption read, "Here's to new beginnings." Dozens of likes and comments poured in, praising her vibe, calling her strong and inspirational. My stomach churned. She left me only a week ago, and it looked like she was celebrating. Another day, another post. Yoga is my new love. Hashtag self-care, hashtag no looking back. She hated yoga, or so she always said. She used to roll her eyes at the mention of a downward dog. And now she was posing in an elaborate yoga stance by a scenic lake, an image that felt so contrived. The more I scrolled, the more it seemed like she was creating an entirely new persona. Instead of the quiet homebody I knew, she was an outgoing night owl, hitting clubs, going on road trips with near strangers, flaunting a carefree existence. She wrote lines like, "Finally living my best life, and freedom is underrated." A part of me was outraged at the hypocrisy. Another part felt a sting of unacknowledged guilt, as if I should have made her happier so she didn't have to do this. Yet logically, I recognized it was her choice. Friends noticed the cracks. Eventually, people we both knew began to approach me with concerned looks. A longtime mutual friend, Alyssa, messaged, "Hey, just checking in. I saw Chelsea last night. She seemed off. Are you guys okay?" That struck me as odd because from her social media, she appeared radiant. But Alyssa insisted Chelsea was jumpy, drinking more than usual, and left early after a tense argument with someone. She didn't look happy at all, Alyssa said. Quite the opposite. Then I heard from another friend about how Chelsea had joined a new circle of acquaintances, mostly younger folks who partied hard. She'd come in blazing, paying for rounds of drinks, talking big about her fresh start. But over time, they said her energy would crash and she'd vanish early. People hinted she was spending money she didn't have, wearing outfits far beyond her budget, as though she was determined to present an image of success. One night, a coworker of mine claimed he'd spotted her alone at a bar, well after midnight, scrolling her phone with a strangely vacant look. She didn't appear to be living that best life glow at all. It seemed more like desperation. That gave me pause. I realized she was putting so much effort into proving she was better off without me. She'd ironically cornered herself into a draining lifestyle. And meanwhile, I was home, quietly processing grief, but day by day finding a calmer equilibrium. As the weeks turned into over a month, I discovered that my heartbreak, while intense at first, was fueling a slow transformation. Freed from the constant stress of her criticisms, which had grown more frequent in the last year of our marriage, I found a sense of peace living alone. I was lonely, sure, but also discovered I like having control of the space, rearranging furniture, cooking meals I enjoyed without worrying about her picky tastes, playing music loudly if I wanted. In tiny steps, I recognized my own identity outside of Chelsea's husband. I had always identified as her partner, her other half. Now I was just me, and that was surprisingly liberating. I started going to the gym regularly, not to emulate her Instagram yoga mania, but for myself. I reconnected with old hobbies, painting small watercolor landscapes, reading history novels late at night. I'd even called up an old friend from college, someone I'd lost touch with. We grabbed coffee and ended up chatting for hours about life changes. That conversation made me realize that, ironically, Chelsea's abrupt departure had forced me to evaluate who I was and what I truly wanted. It wasn't the life I'd planned, but it was a chance to reshape my future on my own terms. Meanwhile, rumors about Chelsea's meltdown circulated among friends. People said she was draining her savings to keep up with this party persona, that she was always on the go, seemingly avoiding quiet reflection. She was cycling through flings or short-lived romances, often overshadowed by drama. One friend told me about a messy confrontation at some guy's apartment. She'd apparently showed up uninvited, and it turned into a shouting match. Another said she had missed some payments on her fancy new place and had to move into a smaller unit. In a matter of months, it appeared that the perfect story of her new beginning was full of cracks, maybe even close to collapsing. Did I feel happy about her struggles? Not exactly. In my better moments, I just felt sadness that she couldn't find real peace. But let's be honest, part of me felt vindicated. She claimed she'd do better without me, but from all accounts, she was flailing. At least in private. Publicly, she tried to maintain the facade. Her social media posts became fewer, but more dramatic, with big emotional quotes about learning from pain and trusting your journey. People started leaving concerned comments. "You okay, girl?" She rarely replied. The day she reached out, it was a Tuesday afternoon. I was at work, finishing up a project, when my phone buzzed. A message from Chelsea. I froze. We hadn't texted in weeks aside from a couple of forced check-ins about bills or mail. Her message was short. "Hey, can we talk soon? I need to see you." My stomach twisted. I told her I could meet for coffee near my office the next day. She agreed. That night, I barely slept, mind swirling with possibilities. Did she want to apologize, or ask for money, or try to come back? By morning, I was still uncertain, but I resolved to hold my ground. We met at a local cafe that we used to frequent in happier times. She arrived first, sipping from a cup, pacing around restlessly. I nearly didn't recognize her. She looked worn down, dark circles under her eyes, hair thrown up in a messy bun, posture slouched. Gone was the glamorous Instagram persona. When she saw me approach, she gave a shaky half-smile. It wasn't warm or confident, it was more a battered acknowledgement of our shared history. "Brandon," she said quietly as I sat down. Her voice wasn't the haughty tone from a month back. It was subdued, almost timid. "Thanks for coming." I nodded, folding my arms on the table. "Sure. What's up?" She started explaining haltingly. She spoke about how her new life was, not what she'd expected. She used phrases like, "I made a mistake," "I'm lonely," and "I'm sorry for hurting you." She went on about how, at first, she thought leaving me would solve her dissatisfaction, but discovered she was still unhappy. Her finances were in chaos, her new friends had mostly drifted away, and the emotional freedom she'd sought felt more like emptiness. She said she regretted the way she'd left, how she'd spoken to me, how she'd never given me a chance. I listened in silence, a slow churn of emotions in my chest. After she finished, she stared at me, eyes brimming with tears. "I miss you, Brandon," she said softly. "I didn't realize how much you did for me, how much I depended on you. I took it all for granted." I inhaled a shaky breath, looking at her trembling hands. A few months ago, hearing an apology from her would have been my desperate wish. I would have latched onto that with relief, but now I felt calmer. The pain was still there, but it wasn't raw. I had grown used to living on my own terms, free from her constant overshadowing. I responded. "I'm sorry you're struggling," I said, my voice controlled, "but I'm not the same person you walked out on. You told me you didn't need me, that you were better alone. Maybe that's still true." She shook her head, tears rolling down. "I was so stupid. I was chasing illusions. Please, I want to try to fix what we had. If you can forgive me." The old me might have jumped at the chance, but I'd spent these months rebuilding my sense of self, discovering I liked who I was becoming. Maybe it could work if she'd approached me with empathy from the start, if she'd shown any respect before. But she had left me in the coldest way. "Chelsea," I began softly, "I don't think we can go back to how it was. That version of us is gone." She sniffled, wiping tears with her sleeve. "Please, we can do therapy. We can talk. I'll do anything." My heart twisted, but I steeled myself. "I'm not sure there's anything left for me to give," I admitted. "I've moved forward in my own way. Maybe it's time you face your own reasons for leaving, for being unhappy, without using me as a scapegoat or a safety net." She looked shattered by that, but didn't argue. We sat in silence for a moment, the hum of the cafe around us. She asked if we could at least remain friends. I told her I wasn't sure. My healing process wasn't complete, and being friends might hinder it. She nodded glumly, accepting what I'd said, perhaps seeing the finality in my eyes. Eventually, I stood. "Take care of yourself," I said quietly. She murmured a faint thank you for meeting me. "I'm sorry," but I was already stepping away, a mixture of sadness and relief swirling in my chest. Epilogue, my new path. As I walked out of that cafe, a crisp wind brushed my face. I felt the weight of our entire relationship loosening. She had left me so abruptly, so callously, chasing illusions of a better, freer life, only to discover that her illusions were just that, illusions, Meanwhile, I had quietly grown in her absence, forging a selfhood that didn't revolve around her or her scorn. Now she was the one wanting to come back, but I recognized that I no longer fit the mold she left behind. Or perhaps she no longer fit mine. I got back to my apartment, ironically feeling more at peace than I had in months. She wanted me to take her back, but that ship had sailed. I saw no reason to re-enter a relationship that once crushed my spirit. So I continue living alone but not lonely. I see my old friends, sometimes new ones, and day by day, find contentment in simpler things. An evening job, a new recipe, a random conversation with a kind stranger. Freed from her presence, ironically, I discovered the best parts of myself. Freed from me, she discovered that her fantasies of independence were shallower than she hoped. In the end, she taught me a profound lesson. Not all departures lead to a better place, and sometimes losing what you thought you needed is the only way to learn you can stand on your own. For her, that lesson might be painful. For me, it's liberating. We might never be a couple again. We might not even be friends. But that's okay, because I've learned that I'm enough without her validation, without her presence, and certainly without her scorn. And so here I am, rewriting my life story day by day, letting go of the illusions and holding fast to a quiet strength I never realized I had. I no longer feel the sting of Aomiyu anymore, because ultimately, her words set me free, allowing me to learn that yes, I could be enough for myself. And that's more powerful than I ever knew.